Well, I'll be honest, I didn't see this episode coming for the sole reason that Juuzou's trigger was pulled. I thought that would be like the end of season 1, but within the 4 episodes we got it, but him still being a little bit of a tsundere, being like, I don't want anyone to ever connect with me on that level, I just let it happen that one time because I had to, right? It's just like, there's this charm about No Guns Life where, for the most part, this episode is actually pretty dramatic. There wasn't a lot of comedy or kind of cute moments like you would look back with the past 3 episodes, but, they still sprinkled in enough to make sure we never forgot that our gunhead-looking character, he's a hilarious guy, right? And even though we're surrounded by so much just chaos with technology and just, underhanded governments and just mafias, things like that, you can have that comedic approach every so often, but this was a pretty brutal episode, all things considered. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people, I haven't took a look at what people have been thinking of this episode as of yet. I will later, obviously, but as of the recording of this video, I don't know what people are going to say about Tetsurou, but I imagine, based on my experience with the anime community, people are going to be mad at him just for the reason that he did, by all rights, get this girl killed. I mean, should he have not taken over Juuzou's body, you could most likely assume that probably they both would have got out of that situation unharmed, because a lot of what happened was he didn't see it coming. And Juuzou, he's been around the block a few times, right? So he probably would have saw a lot of these kind of underhanded measures take form before they actually did happen. But I think what this episode did is, even though it was sad to see a girl end up dead and another pretty damnably wounded, but seemingly gets to survive, I think what this episode did was, as funny as the line was, Tetsurou wiped his own ass in this episode. I mean, Juuzou did tell him to throw a fit, start acting like a kid, stop just being a pushover, and yeah, maybe that was a little unfortunate timing because of what he did, but he still did stand his ground. Did he do things he shouldn't have? Absolutely. Juuzou, he's not going to put up with it if he takes control again. Like, don't do that. For one, it's probably going to kill you, and 2, leave my body out of this, right? But I do think it was an important lesson to have early on into the first season, because you don't want Tetsurou to just be this tag-along character who's like always getting his big bodyguard to do things for him. I do expect that there may be ways for him to use his ability without actually killing him or frying his circuits. Maybe, the good doctor can do some work and things like that. But still, like, you needed him to be able to stand his ground after, admitting that he feels like a coward for just abandoning everyone and only valuing his own life. So even though it did cost a life, I do think it might save more in the future, or at the very least just provide solid character growth overall. I did think it was quite interesting how, it was kind of mentioned like, hey, Juuzou, at any point you probably could have taken control back, right? And it's definitely heavily hinted that most likely he could, but, at the same time, it probably was a pretty exhausting task to just regain control of an arm. But it's something that you do think about, like, what would be the purpose of him fully letting him just be taken control of when he seemingly recognizes, like, this isn't something he would want? And it's kind of interesting. It was almost like a test that you could maybe argue, like, what is this kid really gonna do, and why am I dedicating myself to someone? Like, is he worthy of my help? And I think even though he made plenty of flaws and issues and things like that, I do think this point really highlights that the two are probably pretty good for each other. They're definitely bickering, they're definitely insulting, and they're bringing up some, touchy subject matter, like, because once you take control of a body, you recognize some aspects that you don't want the general public to know. It kind of feels wholesomely a little weird, but kind of magical, all wrapped up into one, and I kind of like that for it alone. But the kind of build up to just what was going to happen with that confrontation before ultimately just everything went to shit, it was actually surprisingly tense with a little bit of comical villain kind of sprinkled throughout it, because they're kind of being held up, and you can't really blame the girls for attacking someone who's trying to protect them, right? I mean, you can take a look at Tetsurou. He was abandoning people when he was fleeing for his life. I mean, if you're being like test subjects and your only way of survival is hurting others, it'd be very easy to manipulate minds, even adults. If not kids, it's probably even more easy to do. So I thought it was actually kind of interesting how it starts feeling like maybe they might join the crew, or maybe they'll be pretty prominent side additions to this cast. And then just to see how they were like immediately rewarded because, oh shit, you brought me Juuzou? Oh, Tetsurou as well? That's just the icing on the cake right there. So yeah, we'll give you a pass for this time, but it's just, you knew it wasn't gonna last. As soon as they got the pass, that was actually when I was the most worried. Like, when everything kind of looked like everyone was about to turn on everyone, it almost felt like these girls had more of a safety card than when they initially got their pass, because if you're gonna say, oh, you brought me these guys and that's enough to save your life, you know it's not gonna last long because you knew Juuzou or Tetsurou weren't going to be kidnapped or kind of thrown into a closet, something like that. And just to see the sabotage, especially with the just dramatic backstory of holding hands, because, you know, you look at this girl, and that has to be pretty frightening. You know, you're literally not human by all rights of the definition, and, you know, you have this friend, someone who's very close to you, holding your hand, always being there for you, and then you're going insane and blind and you can't feel her touch. Like, that has to be absolute hell and torment. And I think this episode, and even last episode as well, kind of highlights the more serious angle that No Guns Life can aim for when it really wants to, because, you know, all things considered, this is a pretty entertaining show just for some of the comedic approaches, just the general slice of life scenes, and just a lot of the cheesy 90s one-liners. But there's a lot of serious stories that you can tell. I mean, look at what happened to Tetsurou and just what they did to his body so he couldn't flee. Like, there is a lot of touchy subject matter, and the fact that they're able to sprinkle such a 90s anime into such a modern light where it has a lot of, like, humor, a lot of, you could argue, dark humor within the show, but a lot of also pretty, you know, childish humor. All the stuff that I really appreciate, and then they wrap it up in this 90s action package where it's so cool to watch these machine-looking characters express such human vulnerability, and it's kind of fantastic watching it week by week. This is a series that I don't even know how long the story should run, but it's something that you could definitely see explored in a pretty lengthy format, because, yeah, you can definitely see the cast relationships eventually growing stale, but when you have such interesting world mechanics and how you could really tell these personal stories, even if they're just one and done like what you saw with these girls. I mean, one is still alive seemingly at the end of the episode, so maybe we'll get to see more of her, but for one of these characters, they were introduced and now they're dead. They started off as villain, then we felt bad for them, and then they ended up dead, right? So it's like, you can argue that even if, you know, there's only so much story that you could tell with Juuzou or any of the characters that we've been introduced to that are going to have a serious role in this cast, there is how many options to just make side stories where you could have a season or two just dedicated to story of the week with this very interesting and pretty sad world where on a surface you see all this amazing technology, but look at what the technology is doing to these people and just the amount of experimentation going upon people who probably got roped in because they couldn't buy food for the day, and some person said, hey, we'll pay you and we'll feed you, just test this new eye, and then that eye controls their brain and they go absolutely wild and can't function by themselves. Like, that's basically what this world of No Guns Life is, and that's why it's quite sad despite having a pretty humorous and comedic kind of surface layer that a majority of the episode so far has had, but then by the end of an episode or in the middle of an episode, there's something that's just like, you kind of pause for a second, at least I know I have, and said, damn, that's actually kind of messed up, but that's what you would want from a series such as this. If this was just, you know, humor or just, you know, dark humor, I think it would grow rather stale. But the reason I've enjoyed all 4 episodes of No Guns Life and am really excited for the future is because it has a balance that just screams forgotten art form, something from the past but clearly done with modern visuals and production, which is something that I always appreciate. Whether you're bringing an old style like Megalobox into the modern light, or you're doing something like No Guns Life, it feels retro but modern wrapped up into one beautiful package, and I'm having an absolute blast. Like, this is a show, I'm incredibly excited to see what a dub would look like for this. Like, this is a show that I will definitely rewatch 100% in full, just because I think this will be even more enjoyable in my native tongue, because this show just screams, like, perfect quality for an English dub. Like, even if you get the worst actors, I think you could still have a fun time with an English dub for this, because I would really hope for, like, a good Funimation dub, but any dub for this would probably work quite well, because you got the gun head looking characters, you got this sassy remarks, like that's what you would want to hear, and I'm loving the voice acting, don't get me wrong, for the Japanese cast, but like that's just how much I'm enjoying this show, and actually have a lot of confidence that a dub failing for No Guns Life would actually be pretty disappointing, because it almost feels like it's just a recipe for success if you don't trip during your first step in crafting the dub. I'm definitely just really having fun with this show. It's one of the more, like, I don't necessarily every single day of the week when there's no Guns Life on, I don't think about it, but Once we get a day or two before the new episode, I start thinking, I'm like, man, that show, I entered episode 1, I thought I'd have a fun time, but each episode, I usually leave smiling. And let me tell you, like, Thursdays, I mean, starting next Thursday, I'll have a lot more free time, but most Thursdays, like, I work like 14 hours in the day, right? So by the time I get up to record these reviews, right, I'm usually pretty tired, but I watch No Guns Life and I'm perked up. I'm literally excited, and it feels like I've had 10 hours of sleep. And the reason is because the formula just sparks this enthusiasm that maybe you're not writing it off as a masterpiece of the season, but what you can write it off as is a great entry to this new season of anime where it's fun, but it has such intriguing story and character elements that actually provide for a recipe that isn't just a fun show, but rather a pretty well written show when you actually break down what it's going for, and that's actually quite exciting. I'm just really enjoying this show week by week. I don't think this will be a show that's going to blow up in popularity as it's airing, but I definitely think over the seasons more people are going to be giving this one a shot and are going to be like, damn, why didn't more people talk about No Guns Life? Because this shit's pretty hype. What did everyone think, though, of episode 4 of No Guns Life? The emotional twists and just some of the cheesy one-liners, because every episode there's usually a couple of good ones, so if you do have a favorite, like, pulling the trigger, let me know down in that comment section below. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to drop a like and also hit that subscribe button if you have been new. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.